funny about the melancholy is I have a lot of people that say to me, I'll be any temperament, I just don't want to be that one. I'm like, okay, so yeah, the melancholy gets a bad rap because I think that when they're unbalanced, they might be, or at least they might feel like it, and maybe it's our culture and sort of how we look at sadness. They might be like the hardest one to work through. But I also think that when you look at the positive sides of the melancholy, I think that they're also one of the most beautiful temperaments, because that's where we gain so much empathy and can learn about how to have proper empathy by watching a balanced melancholy have empathy, and really care for somebody. And I think that, those are kind of like the Florence Nightingales of our culture, and the people that dive in and are ready to help and really thrive on being able to help. That's actually how the melancholy stays balanced, is on helping others and really being able to show up for others and be a good reflection for them as they need it. But I think that where it starts to go awry is if they're unbalanced. Then that's why if people say, I don't want to be melancholy. And I go, but let's just get you balanced, and then you won't feel like that. Mm-hmm. It's unbalanced. They can feel, they can be kind of draining on others. But to be fair, all temperaments can be draining on others when they're unbalanced. Like all of them. I mean, the unbalanced choleric could just be shouting and yelling at everybody, and you might be like, oh my gosh, I just can't handle that. Or the unbalanced phlegmatic could seem like they're just a slug on a log. And the unbalanced sanguine could be jumping around so much that it makes you tired just watching her. So I think that truly all temperaments have those negative sides. What would you say, because we are going to talk mostly about anecdotal stuff that we've learned, what would you say is the hardest part of an unbalanced melancholy?
The hardest part of an unbalanced melancholy is that they can tend to take things personally, that maybe other temperaments
like everything's an attack.
And then that can result in things that are being done out of spite or passive aggressive.
Right. I mean, I think that if you have anybody in your life that is super spiteful or passive aggressive, they are probably an angry melancholy. I think a lot of people will come to me and say, I think I'm a choleric, but then she goes on to talk about like how empathetic she is and how sad she is. I go, nope, you're not. I mean, most of the time, I would say that there is, they're just an angry melancholy. There's not I don't believe, and again, this is like the temperament gospel according to Melisa, but in all of the thousands of people I've worked with, so many of them face to face and knowing them in real life and getting an opportunity to sort of reflect for them, I do not see a choleric melancholy mix, like ever. What I see is an angry melancholy. And now I think it's important to talk about sort of the differences there. So a choleric, the anger that you hear from a choleric comes from a different place. It's generally not tied to emotion in the same way that it is with a melancholy. So a melancholy's emotion and the anger is about like, why are you doing this to me? It's all about, you're doing it to me. Mm-hmm. My children don't mind me. My partner doesn't respect me. The people out there they don't understand what they're doing to me. The choleric's yelling does not come from that place. It's
like stuff's got to get done in its
yes. It's like, I can't believe you're doing that. Let's get busy. This needs to go. You need to do this, and you need to. I mean, it's more like a dictatorship. If you could really think about like somebody just dictating to you, you have to do this and this and this, and then getting angry because you're not doing that. It's never because of what you're doing to me. And so like I think about my own anger when I get angry and in an unbalanced place, it's definitely from a place of I can't believe you're so dumb. It's from that place of like, and that's not right. Of course it's not right, but it definitely comes from that place of intellect rather than ego, mm-hmm. being that it's like in my head, I cannot fathom why you would do something like that. And it's not about why you would do something like that to me, because in my mind, it's all about like, you're doing it to everybody. And very rarely would it be, I can't believe she did that to me. So I think that if you think that you are a melancholic choleric, I'm just going to say you're not, especially if you are, if we're talking about all of these other pieces of the melancholy. Now, one of the things that I absolutely love about the melancholy is all the empathy that they have, because they do have this ability to help others from an incredibly selfless way. And that's how you balance. That's like the best way to be in that place of feeling complete balance, is to help others, because then you sort of have this me mirror that's staring at you, and you've turned it around, and then you're shining it out towards everybody.
Well, our children that lean towards being melancholic, we sometimes set up service opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. When they
That
it absolutely helped. I was thinking about, because we have two that are pretty melancholy. One that was definitely melancholy, sanguine as a child, and now he's kind of flipped, and he has that more imbalance. And one that was sanguine, melancholy as a child, and now she's flipped and she's not in balance. And so it's about like sort of sorting that out, and she's working on that. But one of the things that I noticed, because our adult son that was here with us this week, and he's got a lot of upheaval in his life. So he's getting ready to move for his first time as an adult. He's moving out of state into, they're moving from Utah to Washington. And so he's got all of these things that are stressors for him. When he's stressed, the melancholy comes out more, much, much more, because it's all, again, about, they need to make sure they don't do this to me. I need to not be uncomfortable, like that kind of place of me. And I think that thankfully he has enough of the other in him. It doesn't keep, because he's got the sanguine, he doesn't stay in it. It's like it moves along.
Yeah.
But I think that that was one thing I was really paying attention to this weekend, was he was on edge, and more melancholy than we've seen in the last few visits, but it was definitely tied to the stress that he has coming. So they don't tend to do great under stress, because it's all a personal attack. It's all about how I feel. Now, if they're more balanced, then they can absolutely rise to the occasion. They can help out, and that's how they sort of stay in that place, is by helping. So they're your first responders often in a crisis. They are, people that are helping in natural disasters. They're on the front lines of your church organizations. Usually, they're very much in a place of wanting to be helpful, and they might not consciously know that keeps them balanced. But our son that we were just talking about, he in his childhood, we were always. Like, I could drop him off at a service activity and he'd be fighting mad, and he'd come home happy and cheerful. And so he and I were actually talking about that last couple of weeks ago. He's like, I feel like there's something missing right now. And I said, well, you always had service in your life when you lived at home. So you need to find a way to serve, and then you're not going to feel the way you're feeling right now. And he was like, thank you. We had this great conversation, and he was really receptive to that, because he doesn't want to feel in that drained place. Okay, let's see. We've got 2 comments here. Olivia, I can't read that. Okay, she says, do you have a recommended test to take? I don't, actually, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. She says to figure out what temperament you are. I don't. My recommendation is study. So we have some resources. There's some free resources on our site. And then if you're one of our members, we have a whole mom lesson that's dedicated to temperament. The reason why I don't like online tests is because they are incredibly inaccurate. A lot of people will say, oh, well, I picked mine and I pegged it and it's perfect. And sometimes that happens. But more often than not, it leads you down the wrong path. And it's just because it's a robot. It can't tell you exactly those nuances that are yours. It's sort of like me thinking that because I took that test at Disneyland, I'm Mrs. Incredible. Mm-hmm. It asked me like 10 questions, and out of those 10 questions, that's the avatar that it gave me, but it's definitely not accurate when it comes to everything. So let's see, Lennon says, so true about anger where it comes from. She says, I'm melancholy. I love you, Lynn.
I mean, some of how you figure that out is by asking yourself what motivates you.
Absolutely. What motivates you, like daily?
And then a phlegmatic, they get motivated by comfort, whether it's physical comfort or like just not wanting to be in uncomfortable situations.
Right.
And a melancholic's often motivated by emotional needs, and a choleric is motivated by
the need to get stuff
done, and a sanguine's motivated by whatever,
like the next shiny object.
Yeah, the next shiny object.
So no, I think that's very true. I think that asking yourself like what motivates you. Also the questions that I tend to ask people when they're trying to sort this out is one, who are you when you're sick? Who are you when you're angry? Who are you when you're in joy? And then when you are yelling at your children, where's that coming from? Are you angry because of what they did to you? See, I'm just angry because of the mess. I'm not angry because they did the mess to me. I might say, I just cleaned this place, but I don't take it like personal as in, you hurt me because you ruined what I just cleaned. I would be more like, I just cleaned this. We're working on it together to get it cleaned up. Let's see. A couple of comments over here. It says, the test led me down the wrong path. This is Lennon. And she says, I can figure out pretty fast which answers are which temperament. So I tried to pick the answers that were the temperament that I wanted to be. Yep, that's what generally happens. Dina says, I find my males can be extremely selfish. Yes, ma'am, they can. So when they're unbalanced, a melancholy can be very selfish. And I think as they're sort of seeking a place of balance, if you have been unbalanced, as in you let everybody walk all over you and then you're just angry about it, because I do think that tends to happen. They tend to be more people pleaser, but then as soon as they tell you that they want to do what, do for you, as soon as you turn your back, they're like, I can't believe her. I can't believe she did that to me. So mean and so inconsiderate, and like just on and on and on. Rather than, you know what, I can't do that for you right now. And so she has a problem with saying no. And because she has a problem with saying no, then she tends to be then very passive aggressive. And it might not come out at first, especially if it's somebody that she likes and she respects, but it's there. It will come out eventually. Let's see. At what age do kids reveal their temperament? I think that's a tough one. I think some of us know exactly what temperament our children were when they were born. And other children take a lot of time to develop. I also find that there are times when things flop a little bit. So our kids that have the sanguine melancholy blend, one was melancholy sanguine until he was probably, he probably didn't start to flip until he was like 16.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of his situation is environmental.
Yeah. Because
of my ex-husband's a pretty unbalanced melancholy. He's a melancholy phlegmatic, and so that definitely, when we're unbalanced as parents, it definitely affects our children and their balance for sure. And then my daughter that was sanguine melancholy, she flipped probably about the time of puberty. I'm thinking 12, 13, 14 is when things started to really flip for her. So I think that you want to watch whatever temperament you think your children are and just sort of work with what's showing up and always be looking deeper because they tend to change a bit. She says, I didn't realize we flipped. I figured that's what we were born with. So it's not about flipping so much. And in their case, they flipped for sure. But I think that's because they were almost pretty evenly split. What happens is with all of those developmental changes that happen in puberty, the trueness comes out. Mm-hmm. That true space becomes then full force. So I don't think it's about not being born with it that way. I do think, because I do believe that we show up this way. We show up, we are born with our temperament. It comes, I believe it's attached to our spirit. But I believe that our developmental spaces that happen at 3, 6, 9, and some kids you'll really be able to peg really well at 9, 12, 15, 18, all of those 3-year cycles, they tend to deepen our temperament and strengthen our temperament and strengthen the situation or the direction that we're going in. as we become adults. And I think that that truly, if you look back on the seeds of like a more adult child, if you look back on the seeds of that child, you will definitely see those seeds. Because ours that flipped, I definitely can look back at both of them and see seeds of the strength of the temperament that they have now in their early childhood. And like, and very much, I just think about what a monkey Jacob was. Like, he was all over everything, and he went from thing to thing to thing, and he was super, super sanguine. And then it started to flip when he was younger. So just sort of be an observer and work with what's showing up for you and for your child. Okay, Becca says, that's such a great description of how each type is motivated. Thank you, Erik. Thank you, Erik. I know I included him for a reason. No, I think that, like I said, I think that this temperament gets a bad rap. And I think that we really have to like encompass the fullness of it and really see the beauty that's on both sides. I think that the pairings, like as in like being married, that are going to be the hardest would be a choleric melancholy pairing, because I think there'll be a lot of struggle, and I think there's a tendency for the choleric, if they're unbalanced, to overpower the melancholy. I definitely think in my marriage with my ex-husband, my choleric was showing much more, but a lot of it because I needed more. And melancholies and phlegmatics have a will issue that their will needs to be built up because they have low will, and the sanguine and the choleric have like a will in abundance that needs to be tamed. And so I remember always feeling like I needed more. And because of that, I overcompensated not in a healthy way. And that absolutely, works on how both people show up. So I think that if you're both balanced, I think that it can be a beautiful match. But if anybody's unbalanced, this can be really hard. I think that melancholies tend to be the temperament that goes through depression the most. And I don't think that, and I'm not talking about postpartum depression or anything like that, because I think that kind of hormonal depression affects anybody. But I think that as far as like looking at the glasses half empty, this for sure part, but that's a melancholy and a phlegmatic trait of looking at the glasses half empty. And you might say that, well, we're more realistic, we're more pragmatic, or I'm like, no, you're not. There's a difference. But that's just like the overly optimistic part of me that's like, no, you can't think like that. So I think that another pairing that can be hard is if a melancholy is melancholy with a phlegmatic undertone, if she marries or gets with somebody who's phlegmatic with a melancholy undertone, because then y'all are going to be sad and lazy all the time. And that's going to be really hard for you. You're not going to have that oomph. Let's see. Daggy says, that's interesting. I'm choleric and my husband is melancholic, but most of the time we just balance each other out. I think that if you're both balanced, I think that can be a beautiful pairing. Any of them can be. I mean, I really think that any two temperaments can go together, but you really have to be good at like how you're showing up and how they're showing up. I mean, I think that, like, for instance, we're both very different when we're sick. Erik likes to hide. He likes to get comfortable. And I know he likes to be comfortable. So because I am working every day to be balanced, I'll say, is there anything I do to make you more comfortable? Me, I'm like, damn it, I'm so mad that I'm sick. Like, get mad that I'm sick. And resting while I'm sick is like really hard for me. Let's see. Somebody says, have you studied Myers-Briggs? Okay, so yeah. So if you missed our other videos, I would suggest you go back and you watch those, because we covered all the temperaments, and we talk extensively about, maybe not extensively, but a lot about Myers-Briggs. So this is what I believe. I believe your temperament is attached to your soul, that you show up here with that. And Myers-Briggs, that the personality type is attached to your body. It's attached to how we show up here. So it sort of sits on top. I do believe they can work well together. We have a business coach that does extensively and exclusively Myers-Briggs. And I think he's a great coach, but I go, man, if you could just get temperament in there too, that would totally opens up the door even more when you understand both. Because here's the thing, with Myers-Briggs, I show introverted, but I'm a choleric. And so people want to just take that, and you can't take just that. You have to look at both. Opposites, it's easy to resent or judge or not sit in not understanding the opposite. If you're similar, it's hard to get the pieces neither of you get. Yep. Let's see what else it says. That's long. It really comes down to self-awareness. Yes, it does. Being brutally honest about yourself to yourself. Yes, it does. And willing to be flexible and open. I've really found that to be true with our marriage in using the Waldorf Essentials program. Thank you so much for saying that. I think that, and Marie says the Enneagram does both on many levels. And Marie was talking about the Enneagram stuff, that she feels like it does both. I have not studied that a lot yet, so I don't have an opinion on that. But I do think that it is different. It's different than the Myers-Briggs for sure. And definitely what Becca says, I think if we have to be brutally honest, and if we're on this path anyway, and we're on this path of inner work and trying to show up as our best selves, then that means we look at the bad and the ugly sometimes. It's not fun. No, it's not fun. But it's definitely something that we have to do. We have to look at it. And then I think that what happens is, as we look at ourselves more, then we open up for our children and for those that are around us.
When we're aware of what's moving us, what's pushing us, moving us, motivating us, and what's causing us to react to certain things, and we can navigate it for ourselves better.
Right.
And then that makes us more balanced, and the unbalanced stuff doesn't take you to a destructive path. Not destructive,
Totally.
But it can be destructive if you're not.
And I think what tends to happen at first is that we start to learn about temperament, and then we just want to go judge everybody else.
Yeah.
But we have to make sure that as we're learning about everybody else, that we're continually a mirror for ourselves. Continually. Let's see, we have another one over here. Daggy says, yes, I'm choleric and an introvert, but many people do not believe I'm an introvert because of my choleric streak. Yes, ma'am. I actually, when I took the Myers-Briggs and I came up introverted, and then I sat with it, I thought, well, yeah, because I might be loud and in a leader position often, but being around people exhausts me. And I have to recharge. Let's see. She says, I'm pretty sure I'm sanguine, but not so life of the party or to have a party. Maybe it's Myers-Briggs ENFP that makes me feel sanguine. I need to study more. Yeah, I think that so the way you would know you are sanguine is if you have 10 books unread on your bedside. Or you've read like 3 chapters of each one. Or you have like 6 knitting projects that you can't make yourself finish. Or you got your lessons for your kids all planned for the year, but you're still, like, if you look in your lesson plans, you haven't been able to finish any of them. That's how you would know that as she says, yep. That's how you would know that you're probably sanguine. The melancholy, when it comes to sort of, let's see, hold on. He says, at least people who don't know me well. Yeah. I think that the melancholy, the way she shows up for school, and I see this often, she will often be worried about starting because she is so worried she can't do it right.
Yeah.
So that comes from I think the melancholy moms, they wear the mom guilt badge like better than anybody else. They're constantly worried about their children, constantly worried that they've either done something wrong or that they're doing it wrong all the time. And so, and I see that in melancholy moms and in phlegmatic melancholy moms. I think that phlegmatic melancholy is a hard combination in a person, because the phlegmatic doesn't want to be uncomfortable. So it's harder for them to start.
Yeah.
but the melancholy doesn't want to screw it up. So, and in your temperament already is I'm only going to do it if I know I can do it right. So you've got like the perfectionist streak there. And then the melancholy's got the perfectionist streak of, I know if I can't do it exactly the way I want, I don't want to do it anyway because I'll do it wrong. And so that's a hard one to have, to be side by side. But I think that when it comes to the melancholy mom, I would say do your school planning. Like, we're getting ready to make a planning for peace announcement this week, and we'll talk about all of the times that we'll be going. So I think we're going to do that announcement on Thursday morning, but don't quote me yet because I don't know. We'll watch the announcements. We'll have them up. I think that you do your school planning. You be brutally honest about the things that you need. And then as you are going through your school year, you make sure that you've got all the study so that you're comfortable, so that you feel comfortable and you feel good about what you're presenting. So you're going to probably study more than another mom would, and that's okay. Give yourself plenty of time, because what will happen is if you don't, then you're going to feel like you're failing constantly. And if you are in that space where you think you're failing constantly, I'm just going to tell you, you're not. So it's okay. Love yourself a little bit more. You're not failing constantly. There's a couple of comments here. Caitlin says, I'm always listening to 5 audiobooks at the same time and a podcast in between. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you do that. We have a son that is very decidedly, our oldest, is very phlegmatic with a good dose of sanguine. He can play a video game, listen to a podcast, and watch a TV show at the same time. At the same time. I don't know how he does that. And knows where he's at in each one of them. I don't know about that. Let's see. Caitlin also says, that's me. Mom guilt is so hard. I don't want to do something unless it can be perfect. And Marie says, the inner work that we are all doing will bring up a lot of stuff about ourselves, and we must be forgiving and encouraging to one another, especially ourselves. It's easy to see our faults. Let's see, hold on. What happened? Did I do that? There we go. It's easy to see where did it go? Sorry. I pushed a button and I just pushed it again. What happened? Pushed another button.
Oh.
No. Oh, there we go. Oh my goodness, you guys, technology sometimes. It's important to take the information and also make sure to take all of the good that we have too. Don't dwell on the weaknesses as much, but begin to see your strengths too. Absolutely. I think that whenever anybody says to me, I don't want to be that temperament, I go, okay, let's look at all the positives before we start thinking about the negatives. Because, we've talked about this before, we are, and I'll read those in just a second, we are almost completely programmed by our environment by the time we're 7. So if we have been in a place where we've had somebody say to us, oh, you need to stop crying, or stop being so emotional, or all of that our entire lives, then we're holding on to that. And that's the only way we know how to show up. And so we have to really work at what needs are being filled by me being unbalanced. How do I balance? And how do I look at the good things that I bring too, so that we are taking that subconscious programming that was happening as we were children and as we were growing, and we're replacing that with goodness. We're replacing that with the best pieces for us to show up. And that takes time, and it definitely takes a lot of study, and it takes being very deliberate about it. And when it comes to anything, whether it be blocks about you don't have good friendships, or blocks about money, or blocks about I always attract the wrong people, or I can never do this, anything like that. And that goes across the board for all temperaments. But we have to look at the best pieces of our temperament and be able to walk forward with them. Let me grab a couple more over here, and then there's some over there. Becca says, one of my best friends is melancholy. What we have found is that she is also the mom who will do things 1,000% to make sure it's done absolutely the best, and rocks it out of the park once she gathers her motivation, because she's hyper aware of her children's emotions around whatever she is wanting to do. Very much so. I think that there's a lot of moms with special needs, or moms that have kids with special needs, and we have kids with special needs, and I know how much I beat myself up. I know that those melancholy moms that have kids with special needs are beating themselves up 1,000 times more than I am.
Yeah.
Because they are so, like, you don't want to do anything wrong. You're hyper aware of whether or not they've eaten and whether or not they've slept enough and whether, what supplements they're taking. And while I'm aware of that, I don't take it from this emotional place, but you take it all on. So mom, take breaks. You have to make sure you take breaks. I would say also, the melancholy mom will never get a babysitter. She will really beat herself up about a babysitter, and that will be your detriment. So, like health-wise. So I want you to be in a place where you are willing to look for somebody that will help care for your children, as not as well as you can, but at least to your standard. Let's see. Becca says she's also really great at keeping a pulse on her children's feelings and self-esteem. Daggy says, ideas to help a very melancholy 9-year-old who very much does not want to come down to earth, very much living in the world of unicorns, fairies, angels. Being 9 is so painful for her. Well, one, I would say let her live in that world, because being magical is a good thing. 2, I would start getting her into doing some service projects. I don't know, if you're part of a church, you should look at that. If you're not, look at some civic organizations. There's a website called Just Serve, and most of the opportunities are usually for adults, but you can sometimes find some on there for children. And it might be something as simple as walking a neighbor's dog for them, helping a neighbor with their gardening, helping, something very simple. When our daughter was 9, our oldest daughter, she really struggled. Like, she was like suicidal at 9. I used to remember we worried about her so much because she is taking everything in. The 9-year change for kids that are melancholy is, I think, really rocky, really hard. And it was then that we were really making sure that she had enough service. Like, she went and made quilts with the old ladies at our church, that were quilts that were sent to refugees, something like that. It was something bigger, much bigger than her.
Yeah.
She needed something that was much bigger than her, and sort of having that, it would fill her bucket. And she went for a while when she was really struggling. She went twice a week. And it's because one would just get her to the next one. And she knew that she could go and be encircled by those older ladies that were there making quilts, and she could be encircled by their love, and she could do something that was then service oriented for somebody else. And being able to turn that mirror around, because that mirror is that they're looking in that mirror that says, I am not worthy, I am stupid, all of those bad things that we say to ourselves. And that you gotta turn that mirror around and reflect it to the world, so that mirror then can be, I can help this person, I can help that person. And while I might be struggling, when I help this person, I feel better. When I help that person, I feel better. And when I do this, and it's not enough to have them serve you. You have to have them serve somebody else. It has to be somebody outside your home. It cannot be somebody in your home. It just doesn't work that way. Let's see, over here we have, this mom says, no, I just need to figure out my secondary. Any tips for getting motivated as a melancholy? Well, if you're having trouble really with motivation, then your secondary might be phlegmatic.
Yeah.
But I would say, what makes you happy? What makes you happy? That should motivate you. What makes you get out of bed every day? Now, if you're really struggling with depression, you might be thinking to me or saying to me, lady, I'm only out of bed right now because of my children. Start there. Get out every day. I think that melancholies, I think all temperaments need to make rules for themselves, like non-negotiable rules. But, and as far as like those rules, I mean, they keep us on the straight and narrow. They keep us balanced. And those rules might be, like, as a choleric, one of my rules is that, because I like to control everything, one of my rules is that I have to let my children help me regularly, because otherwise I will just just get over it, I'll do it. And part of that is I don't want the mess that comes from them helping me, and I can do it faster and better. And so I have to let my children help me. Like the choleric mom would do everybody's chores and then be pissed off that she was doing all the chores. Not mad that people were doing it to her, but just mad that she was doing everything. And so, our challenge is to teach others and to slow down. The melancholy mom will do everything for her children because she doesn't want to inconvenience them, and because she thinks that that's the best for them to not have to do any chores, when it's actually backward. You have to help children to do those things. So you want to look at sort of the path that you're on to balancing and think about some non-negotiables for yourself. And I would say the melancholy mom has to get out in the sunshine as often as possible. If you are living someplace where seasonal affective disorder is rampant, you want to make sure that you have those daylight bulbs inside, and that you are getting as much candlelight as possible in the darker months, because the light of a beeswax candle emanates the light of the sun. Emanates, that's not the word, is like the light of the sun.
Yeah.
I had a stroke a few years ago. Sometimes the words just don't.
I'm trying to think of the right synonym for that.
So let's see. Becca says, we have a service fairy at our church. She's 10 and also in the magical world still. Yep. I think that we want to keep children as magical as long as possible. I think that's all of them.
Okay.
So I think that's everything. Does anybody else have any questions as we wrap things up here? We could talk about this forever. And so what I'm going to invite you to do is write down your questions. If you're thinking, feeling, willing member, I want you to hop onto the new support group and pop your questions in the temperament section. And we can talk about it there. If you are not a thinking, feeling, willing member, hang on to your questions. And when we do our summation of the temperaments, which it's not going to be next week, it's probably the week after, then then you can bring them to that session and we'll talk about them then. Or you're welcome to message them, DM me, message them to me, and I'll make sure that I cover them. Caitlin Cooley says, vitamin D helps. Yep, that sun is an amazing, amazing vitamin. So you want to be outside as much as possible for all temperaments. All temperaments. Okay, you guys, I hope you have a wonderful week.